I know I don't normally wear a hoodie when doing these road tests, but for this car, it seemed appropriate. The Focus RS rekindled Britain's love of fast blue ovals, a company that had brought us legends like the Mexico and the Cosworth. These days, the Focus RS is a modern classic in its own right, but is it worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as its legendary predecessors? Well, I'm going to take this Focus RS for a drive today, appropriately dressed, and find out. But first, our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech. So click the link below at the end of the video to enter their latest competition. The Focus had been a revolution for Ford. After those dismal days of the Mk5 Escort that had been lambasted by the press for being worse than pretty much all of its competitors, along came the Focus with its sharp modern styling, its practicality, its eclectic range of models, its class-leading drive, and its blend of comfort, practicality and affordability that put it right at the top of the tree. However, with a rich heritage of fast Fords in the past, the Mexicos, the RS2000s, the RS Turbos and so on, the Focus was decidedly lacking in a hot model, bar the lukewarm ST170. With the Focus cemented as the class-leading family hatch, Ford decided it was time for a proper hot model and teamed up with Tickford to create what they'd originally coined the Racing Focus. However, seeing the commercial flop that was the Racing Puma, they decided that that name wasn't going to fly, and instead they'd be dipping into the heritage bag to look back at one of their favourites, Rally Sports RS. We'd be getting a Ford Focus RS, and Ford would take the Focus RS project very seriously. Not only would it be built pretty much exclusively in the Saint-Louis plant in Belgium, but it would share just 30% of its components with a normal Focus. 70% of them would be either changed or replaced entirely. The Focus RS would be limited to 4,501 units, which would make it that little bit exclusive to give it that air of desirability to it. And some of the biggest components changed would be the engine. The Focus had a wide variety of power plants available, but unlike the ST170 that used the 2-litre Zetec in naturally aspirated guise, the RS would be whacking a turbocharger on it. Once they coupled forged pistons and a full custom stainless exhaust system into the mix, the Garrett turbocharger they strapped on would mean the Focus RS was good for 212 horsepower. By the standards of the early 2000s, a family hatchback with 212 horsepower was a lot. Whoa! It flies! Now 212 horsepower is a lot to get through the front wheels of any car, but Ford wanted to make the Focus RS drivable and usable. So they took the old faithful MTX 75 5-speed gearbox and added a Quaife limited slip differential into the equation. This meant it could manage the power. It fed it to the inside wheel during a corner to drag the front end of the car in and hopefully avoid some of that furious torque steer that the RS turbos of the 80s were infamous for. It also got an uprated clutch, so it wasn't just spinning away all its power, and it was feeding that performance through unique OZ Racing 18-inch wheels bespoke for the Focus RS. They looked the part, they were strong, and they were lightweight. Not to mention, those wheels were covering up bigger brakes, courtesy of Brembo 324mm brakes in fact. Stamp on it in a fast corner, and those brakes could generate 1 G of braking force. And it was no shrinking violet stylistically either. In typical fast Ford fashion, it shouted about its performance. A deep front spoiler, a diffuser at the back, big wing over the boot lid, and pumped up flared wheel arches to enclose the 65mm wider track so the Focus RS could get its power down. So add up all those improved mechanicals and that pumped up look, does it have the driving experience bite to match the visual bark then? I'd say so. Now this is a very wet day today and this is someone else's very valuable Focus RS, so I'm not going to push it hard, but even when you're poodling, you can tell this is something special. That turbocharged Zetec is a gem. There is a little bit of lag to it because it's a turbocharged engine, but drive with that in mind. Whoa! And it is fast. 0 to 60 comes up in the high 60s and the top speed is 140 odd miles an hour. And as for the handling, it feels in no way challenged by what it's being asked to do. The steering is lovely, nicely weighted, really feelsome, typical of a Mk1 Focus. And that front end is superb. Chuck it in and it just grips. doesn't scrabble around like a lot of powerful front-wheel drive cars do. It's uncanny how well it can get so much power down to the ground, even in these wet, greasy conditions. It does torque steer if you go really mad with it, but actually, it's totally capable of it. It's a well-engineered hot hatch, this. And surprisingly comfortable as well. This is a broken British B road here, and yet I'm not being thrown out of the seat. It's remarkably comfortable. Oh, it just sounds incredible. This is a proper yobbo hot hatch. Brings out the worst in you. But when you do eventually calm down a little bit, the RS gives you a lovely place to sit. It's got that new age styling in the interior, like we know from the Mk1 Focus, but a lot of nice touches for the RS specifically. I've got this lovely blue and black leather steering wheel. I've got blue dials with RS written on them. Details like the gear knob and the handbrake lever and the pedals, and these magnificent half leather Sparco bucket seats with blue racing stripes up them. I pay the price of admission for these alone. They hold you in, they're incredibly comfortable, and they look fantastic. So the Focus RS then was a hot hatch home run. It looked the part, drove the part, sounded the part, definitely went the part, made you drive like a bit of a hooligan, just like a hot hatchback should. And yet at under £20,000, it was relatively affordable too. So like every fast Ford should be, it was still a blue collar hero, and it put a massive smile on your face. It was a classic in its own lifetime, and it's small wonder that all of them sold out pretty much immediately. And it kick-started the modern fast Ford era with cars like the Mondeo ST, the Fiesta ST, and subsequent Focus RSs that would push nearly 350 horsepower through the wheels of a practical family hatchback. So we've got a lot to thank the Mk1 Focus RS for then. It's arguably the definitive modern fast Ford, and it absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame alongside cars like the Sierra Cosworth and the Escort Mexico, cars which can command £500,000 as we've seen quite recently. And that brings me on to another point. Classic in its own lifetime, yeah? £20,000 when it was new, and now 20 years on, if you want a good Focus RS in mint condition with low mileage and no boy racer modifications, you're going to pay closer to £40,000 these days. So in just 20 years, this potted up family hatchback has become a genuine classic, a collectible car to preserve for generations to come. The Focus RS really is an all-time great. Because after those dismal 90s years for Ford, with lots of half-hearted warmed-up efforts that weren't really worthy of the badges they were getting, it was refreshing to see a fast Ford with a bit more focus.
This video is proudly sponsored by Lancaster Insurance. Give them a call on 01480 400 889 for an insurance quote on your classic car. And don't forget to click the link below to enter their latest competition.